Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for signing in. I'm Paul Bridges, Chair of the Communities in Bloom Foundation. Very much appreciate all of you signing in today, and welcome to our sixth and final webinar of our special 2020 edition. Today, we're going to be hearing from our experts on urban forestry and environmental action. Today's webinar is for all our national and international communities and guests, and I have to say thank you so very much for all your support in this year's program. In these sort of trying and unsure times, to be able to get together virtually is very comforting to know that people are still on the same track and we're looking to make improvements in our communities. So today we have 72 people registered, so the most we've had yet for the webinar. So again, thank you. 62 communities are here from 6 different countries. So getting some buy-in and listen in from all over the globe. So thank you again for that. We have to say very much a thank you to our sponsors and partners at this time. Their contribution towards this year's edition has been incredibly valuable, and the support of all you registered communities have also been truly appreciated. We take a moment as we start through, and I'll introduce our speakers, to take a look at who our sponsors are this year. Again, we have to be very thankful for them and thankful for you for helping us work through, again, a year that's quite unique. Today, I'm going to welcome 2 of our Communities in Bloom judges, Alain Capelle and Bob Lewis, who will be providing answers and outstanding community examples and best practices on urban forestry and environmental action, and answering questions you may have. Please feel free to ask your questions in the question and answer feature throughout the presentation, and we'll do our best to sort of knit them in and address them as we can. You'll find that feature at the bottom of your screen. And if it disappears, just take your mouse down and hover over the bottom of the screen, and it should pop up again for the chat. So right now, I'd like to introduce the first of our 2 speakers today, and that is Alain Capelle. Alain is living in Newport, Belgium, and graduated in 1988 with a professional Bachelor of Landscape and Garden Architecture degree. He participated in several international competitions regarding the management of the local environment, such as Communities in Bloom, Livable Communities, and Entente Florale Europe. As an international Communities in Bloom judge, he has evaluated communities throughout Canada, the UK, Ireland, South Korea, and Italy. And he has more than 30 years of experience as a landscape architect. Alain's expertise covers all aspects of landscape architecture, from parks, urban spaces and recreation grounds, to city planning and urban design. Alain will be focusing on urban forestry today. And Alain, thank you for coming back to speak to us today, and I'll let you take it away. Excellent.
Thank you, Paul, and good afternoon, Canada, and good evening here in Europe. Urban forestry is all about trees in urban areas. Needless to say that functions of trees has been highly evaluated over the years, from enhancing boulevards and green areas to climate improvers. Before we start the overview with best practices and outstanding examples on urban forestry, it's necessary to underline some of the benefits of our street trees. The quality of our environment in urban areas is getting worse. There is too much particulate matter, noise pollution, too much ozone on sunny days, and so on. Also, it's a fact that our cities warm up fast. As a result, we have to deal with heat stress and periodic flooding as a result of heavy rains and storms. Urban forestry can handle these problems as well as solve. Trees purify the air. They care for shade and cooling on hot summer days, and they help overcome the problem to solve flooding. Let's start with those outstanding community examples in Seoul, South Korea. Anyone who wants to develop attractive environments must take into account 2 important factors: population growth and the changing climate. As key role in this is the networks of water and greenery. The strategic plans and the importance of the green and blue network is here a most successful urban intervention. that transformed a second-floor highway for cars into a grandiose public green space. Before the intervention, this space was filled with thousands of cars every day. Nowadays, 50 miles of public space with a clear stream has appeared in the middle of Seoul. When Bob Iverson and I visited Seoul a few years back, we saw in this metropolis with over 10 million people, children playing in nature, crossing the stream through stepstones and laughing with each other as they played with the water in the middle of this urban jungle. Double and sometimes two double rows of trees flank the streets above and guide the stream from almost 6 kilometers through Seoul into the Han River. Now let's move up to Edmonton, Alberta, and the urban forestry plan best practices. The Dawson Park and Kinkenare Ravine are most important links in Edmonton's River Valley Park network. This network of parks and green areas that are connected with each other not only has an effect on the microclimate and the residential buildings adjacent to the green areas, but also forms pleasant residential areas in periods of heat stress and an attractive network for slow traffic. The urban forestry throughout the city of Edmonton is connected to the cooler outskirts enable air exchange. These green networks are planted loosely to allow winds to flow through. In cities that lie in valleys or ravines, it's important to realize corridors through which to cool the air can flow into the city at night from the green hills. By placing buildings and green areas in the correct proportion and direction, the green ventilation flow can reach the inner parts of the city. Besides that, the green fingers or corridors are most important highways for fauna and flora. It's not so coincidence that heavy rains and flooding manifest themselves mainly in paved areas along water. Riverbank erosion can be costly, and it can result in loss of productive land and damage to parks, tracks, and other infrastructure. The original settlement of city of Kamloops, set in the Thompson Valley, was located in the valley bottom, at the confluence of the North and the South Thompson rivers, and over time it has expanded to extend up the surrounding hillsides. In Kamloops, the urban forestry management plan is also about riverbank restoration. By planting woodlands and trees along the riversides in the Thompson Valley, similar best practices in Calgary, Alberta, where the downtown barrier is part of the city's Eau Claire project and is integrated with the existing park. Outstanding practice also in Cossagar, BC, where a property zoner guide is available to controlling erosion using native trees along the Columbia and Kootenay River. Riverbanks in the Muskota area with native trees are the most cost-effective restoration projects at Gravenhurst, Ontario. Restoring riverbank with trees which were cut and removed over the years is an important step toward preventing flooding, improving water cleanness, more stable riverbanks, and better fish and wildlife habitats. Besides that, Gravenhurst has also an outstanding tree control bylaw containing adjourning or destroying trees along shorelines. These examples of best practices are similar as in Barrie, Sarnia, or Pembroke, or Ontario. The City of Toronto owns a portion of land between roadways and private property, known as the Public Road Allowance. A property owner can submit a tree planting request for the city-owned road allowance in front of their home or businesses. The city urban forestry staff will visit the site to confirm the right tree species and determine the ideal planting location. species available for planting on the city roads allowance are listed in the street tree brochure. This is one of the many plan of actions and bylaws to help increase Toronto's trees canopy from 27% existing tree canopy cover up to 40%. Toronto was the first city in North America to adapt a bylaw to require and govern the construction of green roofs. The Green Roof Bylaw sets out a graduated green roof requirement for new development or addition that are greater than 2,000 square meters in gross floor area. The requirement ranges from 20 up to 60% of the available roof space. The City of Vancouver is moving forward with the development of this green roof policy, with gardens and trees on rooftops and green living walls. Now we go a little more into detail regarding tree management and planting techniques, starting with the zone under the tree as part of the root system. This zone rarely receives the same attention as the above ground parts as trunk and crown. However, the root system is vital for the tree to grow healthy, even if it is in the middle of a pavement. Especially in urban areas, trees take root where the best opportunities arise. Soil compression and poor soil composition are two wrong starting positions when planting trees. The old saying is, the best time to plant the tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. But what if the tree you plant now has to be replaced once or twice by the time 20 years go by? Is that a good result? I don't think so. Many trees that are still along street sides today were poorly planted years ago, simply in a cubic meter of tree sand with tiles on it, often on a sidewalk or between cars, but they don't grow, are sick, or are dead. If the right tree is in the right place and it's well cared for, you only have to plant once. Trees with a crown that are tiled close to the trunk or standing in a well always have a very hard time. Why do trees die? Sometimes the ground level is raised around trees for different reasons. The more the soil is compacted, the less space there is between the particles and the less oxygen can reach the roots of the tree. So be careful when constructing tree grids, difference in level, or sitting edges around trees. Tree root aeration is thus of the utmost importance when planting trees in the urban environment. In order to get a good balance between nutrients, water, and air, it is recommended, especially with city trees, to use an adapted soil mixture for planting whole. Such a mixture can be compost and soil. More standardized mixtures, however, can be obtained by mixing compost with calibrated sand or stony granulate. Now we move up to Bruges in Belgium. Tree bunker systems are mainly used to provide large volumes of unsealed soil for trees and planting in the densely populated urban centers. This system collects and purifies rainwater. It drains rainwater while the tree is in the city dries up. It makes more sense to let the tree benefit from the rain first and then drain the water. It must be said that this requires an integrated approach and an infiltration system that is suitable for both tree roots and rainwater infiltration. It's a beautiful and romantic carriage here in Charlottetown, Prince Edwards. But with this image, I just want to point out the best practices of those trees. The root zone of the trees is large enough, uncompacted, and grassy. There's a lot to be said about the finish of the top layer, and I would like to go more into it. In many cases, you notice mowing damage on the tree trunk, or the tree base is treated with chemicals, killer weeds. We know already that rainwater must be infiltrated as much as possible on site instead of being discharged, these materials can help. First and foremost, an assortment of top-coat finishes that I found dans les jardins de Métis or the Reeford Gardens in Quebec. Tree bases can be artfully finished with different types of granulates, maybe colored glass or wood chips, plenty of choice, but of course always in function of the maintenance without any chemical products. Also cover green or flower beds under trees are most commonly used, even by business and institutions. This offers opportunities for local residents. By planting vegetation under the tree, the soil structure will improve and the tree will get more water. An attractive flower bed or vegetables, herbs or cover green will enhance the street. Every unpaved and planted plot of ground contributes to biodiversity, improves water management, and limits warming. There are paved plots of grounds all over the city. These can also be planted and used by local residents. Many municipalities have developed sustain policy for this and encourage it. Trees represent an ecological and aesthetic value, but they also have an economic value. A study calculated that every dollar spent on a tree planting would yield $7 of saving in terms of infrastructure and energy costs. That value can be determined by evaluation reports. Nowadays, chips are also built in for tree inventory and plan of action for invasive pest detection and control, information on current investigation and diseases, or GIS monitoring. In practice, the water supply for street trees is usually the factor that determines growth. There are trees that can grow on groundwater and trees that rely on rainwater. A tree with a hanging water profile needs a huge, usually low-lying root package to be able to absorb sufficient moisture. A tree with a groundwater profile only needs a few deep-lying roots to meet its water requirements. Whether a tree belongs to one or the other profile usually depends on the type of tree and the growing conditions. In practice, every tree naturally benefits from both water supplies. The city of Pembroke shows us how they deal with watering trees. Bags filled with water or water trenches at the base of the tree are the better examples on how to do it. A young tree that is too dry will die, but if he gets too much water, that can also be detrimental. That is why Brussels has a system in which a chip is buried. If the soil is too dry, the green department receives a signal via an app that pouring is required. It used to be the case that the green services drove around in large tankers and watered all young trees at regular intervals, whether they were dry or not. This is now no longer necessary with this new technology. Diversity is hugely important when choosing trees. Nobody knows exactly how and what rate climate change will occur, although we do have a view of the effects and their influence on trees. We know that a number of species are equipped when the time comes. There are still lots of uncertainties. For instance, we do not know which diseases or infestations we will have to deal with in the future, or whether the trees that appear to be strong now will stand in the future. We can only respond to this lack of certainty at the moment through biodiverse planting. By planting a wide variety of species, we will prevent deforestation through the loss of a vast population of trees, and we reduce the threat of diseases. If we bear the above conditions In mind, we will create the right condition for the development of trees for the future. The correct tree on the correct spot, as here, at this very narrow shopping street, a selection of narrow growing elm were planted. You find best practices for memorial and commemorative trees in Killarney Island. At the Muckross Abbey in Killarney National Park, you can spot beautiful giants. Many parks and green spaces do include features like memorial gates, a pavilion, benches, or trees planted in memory of someone or something. The aim of conservation is to preserve the historic significance and to improve the conditions and long-term management of the site so that future generations can continue to enjoy and appreciate it. Also important to mention, don't forget to pay enough attention to graveyards and heritage or veteran trees when judges come in. Tree management is also about pruning. The goal of the pruning is to keep trees as safe and healthy as possible in the urban surroundings, to minimize any conflicts with pedestrians and vehicle traffic, traffic control devices, and signs and buildings. The city of Leduc, Alberta, and Edmonton has good guidelines for inhabitants and city staff in the Urban Forest Management Plan, with a 10-year strategy named Taking Care Roots Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow, and this all done by qualified personnel and experienced contractors. And to end this short presentation, remember this: if after all the hard work and the proper care, a tree were to die, there is always a suitable solution. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you, Alain. That's fantastic. Some of those trees are really, truly inspiring when we look at those standalone sentinels. So with that, we're going to move on to Bob Lewis. And Bob Lewis is retired from the National Capital Commission, the NCC in Ottawa, where he was the Director for Capital, Urban Parks and Green Spaces. Bob's first career was in the Canadian Forces as a military engineer, where he served in various locations across Canada as an Army Combat Engineer and Military Public Works Director. At the NCC, Bob was responsible for the management of federal urban lands, including pristine parks, urban forests, naturalized areas, parkways, the Parliament Hill grounds, federal office sites, public outdoor recreational facilities, which included the Rideau Canal Skateway, which is the world's longest skating rink. In addition to that, there were 16 acres of flower beds that were worked on, including more than 500,000 tulips and 200,000 annuals. Bob has been associated with Communities in Bloom for over 20 years, a national judge for 18 years, and also a member of the board of directors with us at Communities in Bloom now as our vice chair. Bob has also been the past national chair of Communities in Bloom. So Bob, with all your experience, I'd like to thank you for being here today, and I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for the introduction. And thanks, Alain, for the fantastic insight on how to optimize the urban tree canopy. So my purpose today is to go through the evaluation criteria for environmental action and give you some best practices and ideas that have been successful for participating communities over the years. And I'd like to thank all the communities that have drawn on for this presentation. And a lot of great ideas, and keep them coming. And I have to apologize if I have not named all the communities that these ideas come from. Several of these ideas, many of these ideas are utilized by many different communities. So first of all, what is environmental action? Well, when we think of the environment, we think of green spaces, and we think of trees and forests, and we think of as trees and forests, as Alain just covered, and we think of ecosystems. Well, in environmental action, we're really not talking about those things in particular, because green spaces is covered under the landscape, which was a presentation last month, trees and forests, with Alain just covered, and ecosystems and wetlands, which we also covered. So what are we talking about in environmental action? Well, we're talking about the efforts to minimize the impact of human activity on all elements of the environment that I just described. It's essentially those actions that save the environment from ourselves, and actions that the community and members in the community can take to minimize the damage of the environment, all with the aim of improving the quality of life in our communities. So when we talk about communities, what are we talking about? We're talking about the different community sectors. So in municipal, we're talking about those things that the municipality are doing within their mandate on municipal lands. Business and institutions, all the different business and institutions in the community, and what they are doing on their own properties and within their own business or operation. Residential, we're talking about what citizens are doing, the practices, the best ideas on their own properties. And then finally, community involvement, the actions within the whole community as a whole to help environmental action, and what all these people are doing together. So we'll look at each one of these areas in turn. First of all, in the municipal environment, these are the different things that we're going to look at, and we'll go through each one of those. So in the municipal, sustainable development strategy is very important, and best practice here is to have a plan of what you're going to do, because a plan is very critical. Because if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So with large communities, they spend a lot of money to develop environmental strategic plans, and of course now the optimum word is climate change. So every community is developing a very detailed, large community develop a very detailed environmental strategic plan. So what does a small community do? Well, small community also needs a plan, but it certainly doesn't have the money to put into consultants to develop this whole plan. And a good practice here is that they could actually use the CIB evaluation grid and draw from that, and essentially come up with a formulate a direction or a plan from that. Or also, a good practice is to go online, like here for the city of Barrie, this plan is online, and as many others are, they can draw on those and take what's applicable to them and develop a plan in-house at a reasonable or minimal cost. So you have to have a plan. Other strategies, one idea is a bylaw, to implement a bylaw for the commercial sector to recycle. In many communities, commercial establishment, including apartments, are not required to recycle as part of the city program because it's too complex, or it's going to cost them too much, or variation of different ideas. But we know that the largest filler in most landfills is uncycled paper and cardboard products, and most of that coming from commercial sector. So it's a good practice, good idea to get the municipality to implement this. In fact, a lot of cities do now have bylaws that commercial sector must recycle one way or the other. Under education, good practice to have programs for students, work with the schools to develop environmental programs. And we know this has worked very well for decades. And I think it's been shown that it's largely because the kids that have trained their parents to recycle. So we want to continue that. So in waste, next area is waste reduction, the 3 R's. Number of ideas here. It's great to have a centralized compost facility within a community. If the city doesn't collect, what's worked very well in a lot of smaller communities is the citizens will drop off their composted material, their green material. The end product can be used by the municipality for their own flower gardens, or they can sell it or give it to residences. One community, what they've done is they've taken it on as a fundraiser. In fact, they sell tokens, or they take donations for tokens that citizens can exchange at the city landfill or city site for soil. Again, on recycling, there's a lot of stuff that the cities won't take in the recycle or in the garbage, and you're left on your own to find out where to dispose of it. In Lambton Shores, the high school students had an idea. Why don't they come up with what they call a bulk item management options? And the city took this on, and it lists. They did research, and it lists all the different those hard to get rid of items and where they are best to be recycled. So that's a good idea. As I mentioned, well, no, I didn't. Green bin recycling, that's another idea. It's sort of the next step in recycling after paper, metal, and plastic. And when we're talking about green bin, we're normally talking about kitchen waste. And we know that kitchen waste contributes up to 20% of the landfill. So if you can remove that from the landfill, that's great. So that's a great idea to lobby your government to, or your municipality to do that. An up-and-coming thing is an idea of good practice is green events or zero waste events. And what does that mean? Well, it's essentially everything is recycled. All the activities are environmentally friendly, only paper plates, recyclable utensils, no plastics or drinks are sold, no straws, water container, we have water container refill stations, electronic instead of paper signage, which is thrown away afterwards, a bicycle parkade, promote people to use their bikes to go to the event, discount for attendees using public transport, again, energy conservation. And there's a lot of recycled containers throughout the event, and unused food is donated to food shelters and our banks. There's a lot of information online of how to hold a green event, and as you can see, it's all about recycling. It's all about the 3 R's. Several municipalities have actually passed bylaws that all events on community land or on municipal land have to be green events or zero waste events. And they've even gone to indoor events have to be green events. Other ideas, shopping bag bylaws. I'm sure most communities have these already. This is where they prohibit the sale or use of single-use plastic bags. This is an interesting idea that came out of actually Leamington, and this was a recycler in Windsor, Ontario, that took recycled tires, chipped them all up for mulch, and this is a combination of black and mixed colored tires that were used in a bed. The great thing about this is that it's guaranteed for 20 years, and termites and bugs just don't like it. Another area is water conservation. The catch system for rainwater on a community center, that's on the left-hand side. This catches the rainwater, and that rainwater is used for flushing toilets in the center, and also this is a source of water for the floral baskets and trees throughout the communities. On the right-hand side, I had mentioned water refill stations. This is 2 examples. The one on the left is from Beaumont, Alberta. It's very simple, connects to a water hydrant, and it's become, it's owned by the city, but it's become very in high demand for a lot of the events. On the right-hand side is a portable one that you can move around, also mostly for events, and can be fed by a hose from a local source in a park. One of the most innovative and popular water bottle refill stations that I've seen for water taps, they put on used beer taps. And how long do you get to work those? So people were really going and filling up their bottles on those. Very popular, great idea. Continuing on water conservation, use self-watering planters and hanging baskets. It's certainly been very high profile in the last 10 years, so it's a great idea. A lot of communities have bylaws to conserve water. This is typically odd house numbers, water on odd days, and even numbers on even days, and then there's hours restrictions. So a lot of communities have those. A lot of communities have rebates for composters to promote residences to buy composters. And in several communities, the local hardware store will offer a rebate to the first 10 residents that buy them, each citizen. Other rebates that are common out there are rain barrel and low flush toilet rebates. They all reduce the amount of water, conserved water. These are typically provided by municipality and credit to the utility bill, or as the same as composters, it's provided by the local hardware store to the certain percentage of people that come in first of the year. Other ideas for water conservation, constructing rain gardens on municipal lands. Is to help conserve water and to provide attractive landscape area. This particular one is to treat runoff water before it is drained into a nearby lake. So it is a way of pollution control and conserve water. Another idea was on splash pads, recycle the water. Water could be recycled for irrigation of planters, gardens, and turf areas. Another option there to recycle the water is to recycle it back into the splash pad. But of course, the water has to be treated first, and that could become very costly. So if you're looking at that, you really have to look at the cost benefit and to see if it really is environmentally sustainable. Otherwise, just recycle it into irrigation. Another area is energy conservation. Again, rebates. A lot of communities will give rebates for appliances that are energy efficient, and that generally goes on to your utility bill. Conversion to LED street lighting. It's been, a lot of communities have done this already, and it's typically, the payback is typically less than 5 years. So it pays for itself within 5 years, and it's saving that. Another idea is solar panels for isolated power requirements. This will save on significant costs of having to install power lines into these more remote areas, and also saves a lot on power. And this would be a good idea to have lights on your entrance signs or your entrance display for coming into your community, which is probably usually isolated and doesn't have power to that source. So panels will work well for that. Look at particular different initiatives. Methane recovery from landfill. It's a cost-effective way to produce heat for buildings. Sustainable transportation. A good idea is to introduce more dedicated bike lines, because studies have shown that cycling increases significantly when there's safe biking lanes, and that will cut down on other means of transportation. A lot of communities, particularly in Canada, have introduced idle-free bylaws to turn off your engines and to stop polluting the air. That's a great practice to have within your municipality. Okay, now we look at business and institutions, and here, as I mentioned, what we're doing is looking at what they are doing on their own property, what they can do in their own properties and in their own operations for environmental action. Same as for a municipality, one of the main things every business should have is some sort of a plan for environmental plan of what they're going to do. And as I mentioned, a good easy way to do this is just to use the CIV grid and extract from that your environmental plan. Very cost-effective way. A very detailed one that the city of Lexington, Kentucky has done, they call it the Green Check Program for Business and Institutions. And here they've actually spent time to develop a grid on all kinds of environmental actions. And participating companies are rated on this, and they receive certifications and signings like this green check that they can put on their storefront to show that they are a participant of the program and to show their achievement and show them that they are strong environmental activists. And again, you can institute a program like this using the CIB grid, or in fact, you can go online to Lexington, Kentucky Green Check, and you can actually find online their very detailed Green Check program, and you can use that. Another thing, idea that business have done, food banks have asked patrons to provide their own reusable cloth bags rather than use proliferation of plastic bags. Other ideas for recycled efforts within business and institutions. Many businesses and institutions have arranged their own contract for removal of recyclables rather than going to the landfill. Floral shops, many floral shops will take green material and get it delivered to compost sites. Grocery stores and restaurants, a good idea for them is to donate unused products to food kitchens and food wastes. Recycle it, reuse it. In small town, a service club has taken on eyeglass recycling, where the eyeglasses are reused in other countries. Of course, in larger municipalities, your eyeglass stores do that. So in business and institutions, some innovations that are great practices. Here we have a green wall on a parking garage. Green walls are great because they look very nice, but they also purify the air. They reduce the ambient temperature. They reduce ambient noise. And essentially they improve air quality. So it's a great idea. Another one is green roof. This is a green roof on a corporate factory. Huge roof. Again, it's saving energy. It filters the air, improves the air quality. It's also great for stormwater runoff, and it is also visually pleasing. It also helps to increase the lifespan of the roof. Okay, next we move on to residential, and here what are residents doing on their own property in the way of what action are they taking to improve the environment? Separate recycling, very important. It's obvious, and it's important that the municipality communicate to the residents what goes where. That could be included in the utility bill, or it should be online, or delivery flyer to the house, or even educate the kids, and the kids will educate the parents. Composter, it's a great thing for residents to have, again, to divert stuff out of landfill, and it provides a good soil implement for your own property, for your flower beds, or for your turf. Water conservation, rain barrel. Again, conserves treated city water, and it's a great source of water for irrigation. And just like the municipality, here's a rain garden on a residential property. Again, it saves on treated water. It's great filtering for the rainwater, and it will save water because it will water your flower garden and also the surrounding grass. The last thing I want to talk about is community involvement. And this is where all the sectors of the community come together and help each other and work together with environmental actions to protect the environment and help stop the contamination of the environment. So public participation, civic action, participating in policy development, public forum. It's a great idea to get members onto the environmental advisory committee. Usually every municipality will have environmental advisory committee, will have asked members of the public to come in and advise council essentially. So it's a good practice to get involved with those committees. However, if you can't do that, or if you don't feel comfortable working with an active committee, a great practice is to take part whenever they have an open house on the environment. And this is your opportunity to present your ideas. A lot of these ideas we've talked about here, present those and help to lobby city council. And as mentioned, one really good item for either one of these committees is this idea of the green bin program. There's a lot of communities don't have that now. So that'd be a great medium to get that information forward to city council. So next, look at public participation activities. Some great ideas there. One committee has had, or one BIA, in conjunction with the local Communities in Bloom program, have instituted a refill program. And what this is, essentially, businesses sign up. They allow people to come into their business and fill up their water bottle. This community has even developed an app that shows the location of those supporting this program. And of course, the supporting business gets a sign in their window. So great idea. Another one is to do an Earth Day activity or participate in it. Next Earth Day is April 22nd, 2021. And it's the 51st anniversary of Earth Day. It's a great opportunity to show support for the environmental protection, showcase green technology, rain barrel cells, all this kind of stuff that we've talked about. A great idea to get pass information onto the public. Other activities, recycle and reuse. There's several variations that have been organized by CIB or service groups or others. One is they have a rummage sale for the entire community. This is where residents will donate goods that they don't want anymore, and then they have a rummage sale and they sell all of this stuff, and the revenue that comes from that will go to the CIB or the food bank. In fact, in Hannah, Saskatchewan, they have 2 of these a year, and they collect $20,000 that goes to the local hospital. So it's a great way to recycle and reuse. Another variation, there's a community yard sale on the same day throughout the whole community. So everyone participates and everything's out there, and you just have a go at everything. And that is, everything is sold. A variation of that is a trash to treasure. It's the same thing, community sale, everybody puts their stuff out, but it's available for free pickup for everybody. So again, recycle and reuse. The last one is a landfill or recycle center. Kamloops in British Columbia. At their landfill, they have a recycle center there where people can drop off items that are that are still good, that can be reused, and they collect them and they sell them. And this will, it's run by volunteers, and that money goes into community programs. Some other public participation ideas is composter workshops. These things don't work by themselves, particularly in the residential areas. And workshops, it's a great idea to have this to make sure that they're used effectively. And These are often in different communities. They're either done by a CIB committee, or they're done by the city, or even the retailer will do this, the retailer that sells these things. This is another very popular program. It's Happy Yellow Fish. This is where images of the yellow fish are painted at drains to make people aware of the potential pollution issues of dumping toxic material in drains. So it's, the idea is that there's no pollution in the water and you get happy fish. So that's a happy yellow fish. And it's a great program to get the youth involved. Water conservation education, great idea. Interact with the local school board and school to have special presentations on water conservation. The same way that in recycling, the kids educated the parents, this will also work for the kids to educate their parents on water conservation. A lot of communities are doing construction material recycle. One great idea in one community, they had a youth program that used some of this recycled wood to construct birdhouses, and that went out into the local areas. Some other ideas, another function to take part in and is the National Public Works Week, which takes place every year in May. It's a chance to celebrate all public work functions, and particularly recycling. They can have a rummage sale of recycled goods, toxic article drop-off, environmental education. It's a great opportunity for CIB to work closely in closer participation with the city and the public works and public works sponsors. This is one in an idea that was implemented in Stettler, Alberta. Promote a program for no straws. And it's important to keep, as an environmental thing in landfills and elsewhere. With the support of restaurants, they place little tent cards on the tables in the restaurants with the message, no straws, don't ask for straws. And they also had signs on the entrances, please, no straws. They also had the youth create posters, and they had a poster contests on no straws, and they displayed the results in the local media. The last area is called community support, and this is where you have commercial sponsorship or environmental events, activities, or businesses rallying their employees to volunteer or participate in community events. It also includes the municipality supporting community initiatives, either with funding assistance and or resource help. Two examples, one is this walk and roll, again in Stettler, and this is where a number of the businesses came together with the CIB committee, and if you arrive at that business on a bicycle, you get a discount. Another one example is this Milton Earth Day. You see at the bottom all of the different sponsors that contributed money towards this event. And throughout this, we've mentioned other examples where businesses are subsidizing composters, rain barrels, the refill program, etc. A few other ideas, Bags and Bloom, this is Maple Creek, Saskatchewan. In cooperation with the local co-op store, everyone that brings their own bag into the store, the co-op donates 5 cents to Communities in Bloom. Another one is a Pooper Scooper disposal station sponsorship. They got sponsorships for these. Sponsors were provided usually by local pet stores, vet clinics, and service clubs. So that's hopefully a lot of ideas that you can use and or share. And in summary, it's all about all actions in these different areas, and the idea is to minimize the impact of human activity on all elements of the environment. And a few things to remember: no idea is too small or insignificant. And it's really all about what you can do with what you have. And the idea is to help protect the environment, improve the quality of life in our communities. So what I've done here, hopefully, is I just touched the tip of the iceberg of ideas for environmental action and CIB. And I would ask you to share your ideas and best practices on all our CIB social media, in Facebook, in Twitter, submit an article for the newsletters, just share your ideas. So thank you all. And now we can open up the questions on forestry or environmental action.
That's great, Bob. Thanks very much for that. And it certainly does show from Alain's corporate level and community level down to the personal one-on-one level that we can create from your presentation. Every little bit that each of us can do can make a difference and add up to a greater sum at the end. So that's excellent. I'm looking through chat now and just ask people to sort of speak up as we have a few moments left. And I have a question from Angela Specht, who's asking, do we have any strategies for encouraging or sharing or building our urban spaces with non-humans? So wildlife, birds, insects, and pollinators. Alain, would you speak to that first, perhaps? And you're muted at the moment.
Yep.
There we go.
Yes, we do have strategies for that. It's not a typical Canadian thing. I think it's worldwide. Those kind of strategies.
Okay, Bob, do you have any specific examples of things? I know you talked about some of our park areas and wildlife areas.
Well, it's certainly very popular throughout a lot of communities of doing pollinator gardens. Bees matter, and so that is certainly encouraged, and it's done. It's just putting in pollinator gardens. That's certainly for wildlife. Birds and insects. It is interesting with the
While Bob's just looking for, I think he's looking for a paper to show us. The pollinator gardens and boulevard gardens, I think, are a really easy way for each and every one of us. Almost every home has a boulevard, which is an unused and underutilized space where pollinator gardens and wildlife corridors can start easily being created. And I mean, to get our children involved in something like that can be a lot of fun for a family, but start to create those pathways and corridors on an underused space that we really almost don't need as human use.
Yeah, I was just thinking of rain gardens. If you put native plants in those, and with the amount of irrigation and in those, they can be a great attraction for wildlife and small wildlife and birds and insects. So that's one advantage of rain gardens.
Absolutely. I know Peel region is doing fusion gardens, and a big part of that is rainwater harvesting. So we had one of our attendees, Haley Hart from Peel. So she could probably look up fusion landscapes in her region and find professionals who are able to help out and do site reviews to talk about how to better utilize space, harvest, save water, and like Bob said, put pollinators in and use native plants. So it's little wee areas at a time can make a big difference. So I'm afraid we are running out of time today, and this is our last webinar for the summer. But I definitely want to thank Alain and Bob again. Your presentations have been really fantastic. And again, our communities and sponsors and guests that are here participating, thank you so very much for carrying through with us. and our sponsors this year have helped make 2020 so far in a year of undecisiveness and indecision. I think, and I hope that you feel we're trying to put our best foot forward to show you how we can still stay together as communities. Our 2020 virtual symposium is up and running September 23rd, 24th, 30th, and October 1st, then through October 7th, 8th, and 9th. So we'd love to have you join in on that and sign up through the website. And again, thank you everyone for joining in. This completes our summer webinar series. I believe next year might have some of these same flavors to it, but by any input or comments you could make to help us figure out how next year can be stronger and more relevant to each of you in your communities would be very beneficial. So thank you again. Thank you to the presenters, and I wish you all the best as we finish our summer season. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.